Welcome to a brand new episode of Go. I'm your host, Danny Giesbrecht, and this is my new boyfriend, Boomer. And we are outside of the city at Ed Wedman's family farm. Ed, give us a wave. This farm has been in his family for 5 generations, homesteaded in 1892. And as the countdown to the Canadian Finals Rodeo begins, we're showing you just how passionate ranchers in Alberta are about their animals. These horses, 100% part of Ed's family. And coming up later in the show, we're going to meet 2 retired horses who are getting in their senior years but still having a wonderful time out here in the country. Stay tuned for all of that. But first, we learn how Muslims here in Edmonton say they are feeling ostracized and shame. Shaw TV's Brian McLaughlin caught up with one local mom to find out how she's coping. Thanks for that, Brian. From here, we have a sneak preview of our next episode of Sherwood Dodge Road to Hope. They ran away and now they're coming back. I'm a little bit scared of horses. Not a true cowgirl, but what does it mean to be a true cowboy? Ed explains after the break. Plus, we meet Ernest and Timber and some adorable baby calves. That's my clipboard. There's no milk coming out of there, I promise you that. Welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in now, we are at this gentleman's farm, Ed Wedman, outside of the city, and we're learning all about rodeo and ranch culture here in Alberta while I get a nice finger massage. Oh yeah, 3 in the mouth, look at that. As we all know, the Canadian Finals Rodeo is coming back to Edmonton next week, and a lot of the time there's a lot of negative stigma around what happens to the animals if there is an incident, and people forget how passionate these ranchers are about their animals. We're going to be speaking with Ed about all the history behind his family farm coming up in just a moment. But first, life after broadcasting. It's something many of us in the biz ponder. What do we do when we retire? Well, Shaw TV's Tim Dancy caught up with a former broadcaster to find out how he keeps busy. Hey, bud. There you go. You like those fingers. Looks like he's spending those golden years well. Thanks for that, Tim. Do you know what a cowboy's contract is? Ed is going to explain it coming up right after your Go Sports Report with Shaw TV's Dave Dawson. All right, we are now joined by the man himself. This is Ed Wedman, and we're talking all about ranching and ranching here in Alberta. Let's start with the history behind your property. It's been in your family for over 100 years now.
Yeah, my grandfather homesteaded this in 1892, came from Germany.
Wow.
And started here and raised my dad, and now I raised my son, and now he's on to his son, so we've been here a while.
5 generations of ranchers. You have 300 cattle, 30 horses, and we're talking a little bit about sometimes the negative stigma the ranchers get here in Alberta. With the Canadian Final Rodeos coming up next week, sometimes it's the bad press that makes the most commotion, and you forget about how passionate ranchers are about their animals.
It's not just our livelihood and our income. These animals are living creatures, and we take good care of them. And the whole sport of rodeo started by a bunch of cowboys that treat livestock and got together and try to prove themselves that they're better than their buddies, and to go out there when you're on an open range and you have a sick cow, pink eye, foot rot, you can't be chasing them around, and to do less harm than good, you want to go out there and secure them down, treat them properly, and release them as quick as possible. And the easiest way to do that to this day is on horseback. There's not, when you're on an open range of 20, 30,000 acres, there's not a corral on every corner. And you have to be able to get out there, find your animal, and doctor it, because they don't come like a dog when you whistle to come get a pill. You have to do it. They're a range animal, and they travel, so you have to travel after them.
You're a former team roper yourself, former cowboy. What did performing in rodeos teach you about animals?
Oh, it's a lifestyle, and it's just the way you appreciate your animals and you appreciate your other cowboys. is a cowboy to me is, I guess the best way to put it, a cowboy's handshake is as good as a contract, because I have yet to meet a true cowboy that you have to put it on paper.
I know you were telling me earlier that you have 2 retired horses on the property. They are former rodeo horses, and it's very expensive to keep horses in the family if they're not performing anymore. But they are a part of your family, and that's why you have kept them on the farm.
They are, and they hold a lot in our hearts, and just because they're not performing, they are part of the family. And Ernest, he's 28 years old. Timber is 31 years old, and they mean a lot to us. And we dread the day that we go out there, and they will be gone. I mean, it's tough for a cowboy. You want to see a cowboy cry? Take his horse away.
We're going to meet Ernest and Timber coming up later in the show. Ed, thanks so much for your time. Stay tuned. More after this. Ernest and Timber, here they are. Welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in now, we are at this gentleman's family farm, Ed Wetman, homesteaded in 1892. As we all know, the Canadian Finals Rodeo returns to Edmonton next weekend, and we're showing you just how passionate ranchers in Alberta are about their animals. So passionate, in fact, that Timber and Ernest are retired rodeo horses. You can tell how old they are by looking at their coats, but they're a part of the family, and so they're kept on the farm. We're going to be speaking with Ed about these 2 coming up in just a moment. But first, we meet a local woman whose entire career is based around hair. But when it comes to her own, she's shaving it off. Here you go, bud. Dig in. Oats, yummy, yummy. We're going to talk all about Ernest and Timber with Ed in just a moment. But first, we hit the streets to find out what you would do if you won big. You want some? Who wants some? There you go, buddy. Thanks for that. Now, Ed, what would you do if you won big?
Like the lottery?
Yeah.
I'd buy a big piece of property, and I'd have a home for retired horses. First time I mentioned it, everybody thought I was crazy. It's become a big thing down east, and it's not. It's because of the loyalty of these fine animals that I would do it.
Fine animals like Ernest and Timber, your own 2 retired horses. These were your son's horses originally, and you've kept them in the family. Tell me about your relationship with these horses.
Ernest, we bought from a neighbor. She had 2 horses for sale. We bought him as a 2-year-old, so that's like 26 years ago. And I bought him and had him broke out for my son, and Jake taught him to team rope, and he was an excellent team roping horse till he had an injury, and he probably hasn't been ridden in probably 12 to 14 years, but he's just such a lovable horse. He's like a big dog. Timber was another horse that Jake had bought, and well, we raised a lot of horses, and he actually sold him to a good friend of mine, Brian Hunter, and part of the deal is Brian could not take that horse off the property and keep him anywhere but here, and he has to retire here, and they're still here, and we come out every day. We get to see them every day because they're here with the cows, and they're just great friends.
Just part of the family. Wonderful. Ed, thanks so much. Before we go, here's your on-the-go calendar. A big thank you to Ed Wetman for having us out to his family farm. Beginning next Wednesday, we're going to have coverage of the Canadian Finals Rodeo here on Shaw TV's Go Edmonton. Make sure you're tuning in Wednesday through Sunday. I've been your host, Dani Giesbrecht. We'll see you next time.